Hello, everyone. I'm Tanya Rivero. Thank you for joining us on this Martin Luther King Jr. Day. We are just 2 days out from Inauguration Day, and Washington, D.C. is on a very high security alert. Capitol Hill feels eerily similar to a military zone. In an unprecedented move, the FBI says it is vetting all 25,000 National Guard troops now stationed in Washington. There is concern about a potential inside attack on the inauguration. But it is not without incident. There was a bit of a scare on Capitol Hill this morning. The building was placed on lockdown due to an exterior threat. It turns out it was a nearby fire that was quickly extinguished. Officials gave an all clear after they determined the building was safe. Speaking of threats, a CBS News poll reveals 54% of Americans believe the biggest threat to our way of life comes from within the U.S. That's opposed to foreign adversaries, viruses, natural disasters, and economic forces. CBS News' Chief Justice and Homeland Security correspondent Jeff Pegues is following the Capitol investigation and security operation in Washington.
New video published by The New Yorker shows rioters pouring through a window into a hallway of the Capitol on January 6th. Whose house? There, they told police why they say they were in the building.
We are listening to Trump, your boss.
They eventually gained access to the Senate chamber.
Hey, let's take a seat, people!
Some were searching for lawmakers. On the Senate floor, they rifled through papers looking for any valuable information.
I think Cruz would want us to do this, so yeah, absolutely. I think we're good.
And pose for photos.
I love you guys, you're brothers, but we can't be disrespectful.
Don't disrespect. They can steal an election, but we can't sit in their chairs?
No!
Seen in the video is Air Force veteran Larry Brock, who is carrying plastic zip ties that can function as makeshift handcuffs.
It's a PR war, okay? You have to understand it's an IO war. We can't lose the IO war.
Brock has been charged with knowingly entering or remaining in a restricted building and violent entry and disorderly conduct on Capitol grounds. Brock is one of at least 22 current or former members of the U.S. military or law enforcement who've been identified as being at or near the riot. That's according to the Associated Press, which also reports the defense officials' fear of possible inside attack at the inauguration. David Martin has asked General Daniel Hawkinson, the chief of the National Guard Bureau, about any internal concerns.
Are you worried at all about the reliability of your National Guard troops?
Absolutely not.
Have you been screening some of the troops as they come in?
Yes, sir. In coordination with the Secret Service and the FBI, they're screening all the personnel that are coming in.
The National Guard troops answer to the commander-in-chief, who until Wednesday at noon will still be President Trump. On 60 Minutes last night, Scott Pelley asked Acting Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security Ken Cuccinelli what they would do if Mr. Trump asked them to stand down.
We're going to complete our jobs. There's not a stand down. We have a statutory mission. We're going to perform under all circumstances, and I think that hypothetical is not going to happen. It's unimaginable.
What was unimaginable just a few weeks ago is that the security presence in this city for Inauguration Day would be as big as it is right now, or the prospect of Americans threatening violence against fellow Americans, but that's where things stand right now. Jeff Pegues, CBS News, Washington.
Let's bring in Shane Harris now. He's an intelligence and national security reporter with the Washington Post. Hi, Shane. Welcome. Great to have you with us. So what do law enforcement officials currently believe is the biggest threat? Are they concerned that far-right groups will try to cause the same sort of havoc they did on January 6th, or are they more concerned about some kind of inside job?
Well, I think that the insider threat really is pretty high right now. And you see that reflected, as you reported from David Martin there, screening of National Guard members, which is unprecedented. And we have a huge number of them already in Washington, 20,000. But what I think that also tells you is that the concern about an attack on the Capitol like January 6th is perhaps not as high on the list as attacks at less defended state capitals. I mean, Washington really is a fortress right now. We've already seen some of the far-right groups online talking about staying away, some of them actually falsely believing that this is some kind of false flag to trap them into an attack. It's the lesser defended state capitals that I think probably law enforcement is more worried about right now.
Can we talk a little bit more about this threat of some sort of inside job? Because as we just mentioned, the FBI is vetting all 25,000 National Guard troops, which, as you said, is unprecedented. What more do we know about this? What sort of evidence do we have that this is a viable threat?
Well, there have been indications from reports and also from, I think, from some of the law enforcement actions so far that in that crowd there were armed forces service members, off-duty law enforcement. This is what's raising concerns that there could be potentially in this group of 20,000 people some number who have sympathy with the insurrectionists, frankly. I mean, it's it gives no one any pleasure to say that, but that becomes the concern, given that you did have people out of uniform participating in this event on January 6th. So when the general of the National Guard officer there talked about doing screening with the Secret Service, it's a fairly rudimentary screen, frankly. You're talking about kind of a background screening to make sure there's not a criminal record, perhaps. I don't think there's time to do social media scrubbing of 20,000 National Guard forces, but they're looking for any kind of red flags that might tell them that they could potentially have sympathies with groups that attacked the Capitol on the 6th.
So you said they can't do sort of a deep dive into, each person's social media footprint. So there's a chance that if somebody is really intent on hiding their, affiliation with one of these groups or one of these ideologies, they could do it. I mean, it doesn't sound like there's enough time to really deep dive into every single National Guard troop that will be stationed in Washington for inauguration, correct?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I mean, it's not realistic to think that in the midst of deploying these forces for a huge security event that you could do a background check on every single one of them. So, we shouldn't necessarily think that each one of these people is being scrubbed. I just don't think that that's realistic. So, yes, there is a chance for that. And I think that it's something that obviously the National Guard leadership is taking into account. I would imagine that the vast majority of those who are there, who swore an oath, obviously, to defend the Constitution, are going to do their jobs. And it would be pretty remarkable if there were some kind of fifth column within this Guard force. But it's not something that can be discounted, frankly. And it's again, it seems unimaginable to say that. But I mean, even to Scott Pelley's questioning of Ken Cuccinelli, obviously the unimaginable is something that we now have to take into account.
Right, because we saw the unimaginable unfold, at the Capitol. So, Shane, this is obviously an unprecedented time in U.S. history. The inauguration is usually, or is supposed to be, a time for the country to come together and celebrate the peaceful transition of power. Are the images and the optics of this level of security, how does that play into the idea of a peaceful transfer of power? And could this become the new normal going forward?
Well, it's certainly not a peaceful transfer of power, in my opinion. I think a lot of security experts would share that as well. January 6th was the culmination of nearly 2 months of President Trump lying to his supporters about an election that he said was fraudulent. It was not. It has been certified. There have been, 6 or so cases in court. He's lost nearly all of them. So this is anything but peaceful. It was not politically peaceful, and it obviously became violent on January 6th. The question of whether this is a new normal, I mean, we're going to have to wait and see, but we are entering a period now in American politics in which it seems to me that, roughly half the country, give or take, believes an alternate set of facts. And an extraordinary number of Republicans believe that this election was illegitimate and that Joe Biden was not legitimately elected president. That does not speak well for not only a peaceful transfer of power, but a peaceful politics in this country in the months and years to come.
Indeed. Shane Harris, thank you so much for sharing your insight with us. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.